found another job," Clara Bennett said, sliding her resignation across Dante Moretti's desk. And the Mafia boss's pen stopped in the middle of his signature. The black ink thickened beneath the nib. Clara had cleaned this mansion for 2 years, long enough to know that powerful men rarely noticed. The woman carrying fresh linen, until something stopped working. Today, she gave him 2 reasons to look up. "I'm giving 2 weeks' notice," she said, then touched the purchasing sheet beneath his hand. "And before you sign that, there's something wrong with the linen order." Dante's gaze moved from the envelope to her finger. "What's wrong?" "It says 48 imported sets were delivered. I unpacked the shipment. There were 12. The study went silent. Victor Halle, the estate manager standing near the bookcase, gave a thin laugh. "A clerical error. Clara should return to housekeeping." Clara felt the familiar dismissal in his tone. Victor had spent years treating her broad body and grey uniform as proof that she belonged in service corridors. Useful when unseen, and inconvenient when she spoke. Dante did not laugh. "How certain are you?" "I counted them, stored them, and logged them. Could another delivery have arrived? Not through household receiving." Dante set the pen down. "Then I'm not signing 48 until someone explains 12. Victor's expression tightened. Clara placed the resignation beside the invoice. Dante looked at it again. "Why are you leaving?" "Because the Whitmores interviewed me for housekeeping supervisor and asked what I know. Not only what I clean. If this is salary, I can increase it." "It isn't." "Hours? No. Benefits? No." His voice cooled. "Then what?" Clara held his gaze. "I realized I've spent 2 years making this house easier for everyone, while everyone above me kept seeing only the maid." Dante glanced toward Victor, then back to her. "And if I asked you to stay, I'd ask why." For the first time, the feared man behind the desk had no answer. "Ready?" Clara nodded once. "That's why." She turned toward the door. "Clara." She stopped. Dante looked at the resignation. Then the unsigned invoice. 2 weeks. That's what my contract requires. And the linen. That's what your signature requires. She left him staring at both pieces of paper. With a deadline he could not buy away, and a question he could no longer dismiss. The first consequence arrived less than an hour later, and it was embarrassingly small. Dante wanted coffee before a conference call, and learned the kitchen rotation had changed without anyone telling him. Victor, carrying the purchasing folder back into the study, said, "Clara usually catches those overlaps before they reach you." Dante looked up. "Why Clara? She knows everyone's schedule. She is useful with details." Useful. The word irritated Dante now. He tapped the unsigned bellwether invoice. And this Victor produced a corrected copy showing 12 linen sets. Supplier error. Resolved. Dante checked the timestamp. The correction had been generated that morning, after Clara challenged the quantity. When Clara returned with the household ledger, he handed it to her. Satisfied, she checked the date and shook her head. "No." Victor exhaled. "What now?" Clara placed the 2 invoices side by side. If Bellwether corrected the mistake before today, why was this version created after I questioned it? Victor said the supplier had probably reissued the document on request. "Possible," Clara replied. She did not accuse him. Dante noticed that restraint. "What do you know?" he asked. 12 arrived. 48 reached your approval packet. The new invoice fixes the amount, but it doesn't explain how the wrong amount got that far. Dante closed the folder. Then payment waits for verification. Victor's jaw tightened. We are delaying routine business because a maid counted sheets. Dante's eyes lifted. We are delaying it because she counted 12 and my signature was about to approve 48. Clara gathered the ledger. Dante asked, "Why did you notice?" She gave him a tired look. "Because I know what comes into the house." By the end of that day, Dante learned Nina and the others relied on Clara to fix schedule, guest, and staffing problems before they reached him. Victor remembered that someone missed a shift. Clara remembered why. Her impact had been invisible because it prevented disruption before powerful people had to see it. On Monday, Victor placed a disciplinary note in Clara's file, accusing her of accessing financial records without authorization. Clara demanded a copy and disputed it. Victor's gaze traveled over the gray uniform he had repeatedly ordered in an unforgiving cut. You have always been most effective when guests barely notice you. Don't confuse being noticed now with belonging upstairs. Dante later found Clara writing her response. He wanted Victor's accusation deleted. Deleting a bad record isn't the same as correcting it, Clara said. She asked Dante to write date and sign exactly when he had authorized her review. Then leave both statements in the file. People in her position survived by making facts harder for authority to erase. Dante complied when he noticed only 10 days remained before she left. He asked whether the house would miss her. Clara answered with handoff plans. That's the practical answer. What's the other one? Ask them. The first valid proof that the linen problem was not merely a supplier typo came that afternoon. Clara was inventorying the cleaning closet with Nina when she found 6 cases of imported floor treatment listed as delivered 3 weeks earlier. Only one opened case, and part of another remained. Did maintenance take any? Clara asked. Nina shook her head. They used their own. Clara checked the prior inventory. 2 cases had been on hand before the supposed delivery. Normal use would not account for 6 new cases disappearing in 3 weeks. She could have gone directly to Dante, but she remembered her own rule. Suspicion was not proof. She found the receiving sheet instead. 6 cases. Signed by Evelyn Price. Clara stared at the name. Evelyn had left the estate 4 months earlier. That changed the question. She carried the receiving sheet and inventory record to Dante's study. Victor was there. Clara stopped at the doorway. "Come in," Dante said. Victor's eyes moved to the papers. Another household emergency. Clara ignored the tone. "I need to verify a receiving record." Dante gestured to the desk. She placed the papers down. Bellwether billed 6 cases of floor treatment 3 weeks ago. The receiving sheet says 6 arrived. And Victor asked. Evelyn Price signed for them. Victor's face did not move. Dante frowned. Who is Evelyn Price? Former housekeeping staff. She left 4 months ago. Dante looked at the signature. Victor reached for the sheet. Receiving forms are sometimes completed later from delivery logs. Someone may have used the wrong employee code. Clara shook her head. It's a handwritten signature. Then someone signed the wrong name. Possible. Victor's irritation sharpened. Everything is possible to you until it becomes inconvenient. Clara looked at Dante. Call Evelyn. Victor scoffed. For a cleaning product? Yes. Dante picked up his phone. Victor's expression tightened for the first time. Evelyn answered on the 3rd ring. Dante put the call on speaker after explaining why he was calling. I haven't been at the Moretti house since April. she said. Did you sign any receiving documents after leaving? No. Did anyone ask permission to use your name on one? Absolutely not. Clara watched Dante's expression change. Thank you. He ended the call. The room became silent. Dante pushed the receiving sheet toward Victor. Explain. Victor looked at the signature. I can't. You approved the purchase. I approve hundreds of household orders. I do not personally receive deliveries. Who does? Receiving staff. Department supervisors. Whoever is available, Clara said. Evelyn wasn't available. Victor's eyes snapped toward her. Dante intervened before the exchange could become personal. Enough. This verifies one thing. The receiving record is false. He looked at Clara. Does it prove the 6 cases never arrived? No. It proves the paperwork claiming they arrived cannot be trusted. Dante nodded. The first suspicion had now become proof of a specific false record. And the old explanation, ordinary supplier typo, could no longer explain everything. What changes? He asked. Clara understood what he meant. We stop asking whether the linen invoice was one mistake. We check whether bellwether quantities match what the house actually received. Victor's face hardened. You're allowing a maid to define an internal investigation. Dante looked at him. I'm allowing the person who found the false record to tell me what question it creates. Clara felt the power in the room shift, but she did not enjoy it. Power could shift back. Evidence had to survive whoever held it. For the next several days, Clara and Dante tested only bellwether orders. Clara knew household reality, what quantities fit on shelves, how quickly supplies were used, who worked which weeks, and which deliveries required extra storage. She also knew her limit. She could establish what the house received and used. She could not trace money or prove motive. When Dante asked whether Victor was stealing, she answered, I don't know. What she did know was enough billed quantities did not match household reality, and one receiving document was demonstrably false. Dante also began seeing what records could not measure. Clara corrected frightened employees privately, remembered personal constraints, and spoke to him without performing fear. Respect became trust before he recognized it. One evening, Dante found Clara moving a bellwether box into the narrow storage room so she could compare its lot label with the receiving sheet. His instinct was to take it from her. Clara shifted the weight before he reached her. Ask. Dante's tarde. Whether you want help, you're learning. Do you? Yes. He took the heavier end and followed her inside. The door swung shut behind them. When Dante tried the handle, it would not open. Clara exhaled. That latch sticks from the outside. Convenient. Don't turn a bad hinge into a conspiracy. The emergency light cast the cramped room in dull amber. Dante could hear Clara's breathing after the lift and became abruptly aware of how close they were. Of the clean citrus scent on her skin beneath starch and laundry soap, and of the fact that attraction had arrived before he had found a respectable name for it. He stepped back rather than crowd her. Are you all right? I'm plus size. Don't. Not made of glass. I carried half the box. That wasn't what I asked. Clara looked at him, surprised by the distinction. I'm fine. He called the service desk, then waited instead of forcing the door. Clara checked the label while they stood there. Same supplier code. You are investigating while locked in a closet. Storage room. My mistake. Important distinction. He almost laughed. When Nina opened the door 4 minutes later, Victor stood behind her. His gaze moved from Dante to Clara and sharpened. "I was told the latch jammed," Nina said. Clara carried the label sheet out. "It did." Victor's expression suggested another interpretation. But Dante saw Clara straighten as though preparing to defend her mere presence. "She was here at my request," he said. "Later, when they were alone," she said. "You didn't have to make it sound like permission." Dante understood the correction. "No, I should have said we were working together. Better." The midpoint came when Clara mapped verified discrepancies against the estate calendar. Inflated quantities clustered around large dinners and extended guest stays. When real consumption varied enough to hide exaggeration, the goods were real. The needs were real. Someone made the real need larger on paper. Dante pointed to Victor's approvals. Clara finally said, "The pattern is deliberate, but access was not motive. Counting more closets proves the same method. Now, we need benefit." Their strategy changed. Accounting followed Bellwether, and found service credits tied to Moretti purchases had been redirected to a consulting company controlled by Victor's brother-in-law. More dangerous than the stolen money was the compromised receiving chain. Bellwether trucks had been waved through a Moretti-controlled gate on Victor's authority. In Dante's world, that was a security failure, not merely bad bookkeeping. Dante wanted Victor removed immediately. Clara agreed. The evidence had changed, but insisted the confrontation be documented before the staff, whose knowledge Victor had treated as disposable. The meeting took place the following morning in the formal dining room. Clara had polished that table hundreds of times. Today, a chair waited for her. Victor arrived last, and immediately attacked the one weakness he believed could still save him. "Before we begin, I want it recorded that I object to junior household staff participating in a financial review beyond their training." Several people looked at Clara. Dante prepared to answer, but Clara gave him the smallest shake of her head. He stopped. "That's fair," she said. Victor blinked. "I'm not an accountant. I don't understand tax treatment, supplier finance, or corporate reporting. I never claimed I did." She placed the linen record on the table. "I know 12 linen sets arrived because I unpacked them. I know 48 were billed because the invoice said 48. I know Evelyn Price could not have signed a receiving form 4 months after leaving because we called her and she confirmed she did not." Clara moved to the floor treatment record. "I know the estate could not reconcile the billed quantity with prior inventory, normal use, and remaining stock. Those facts required verification. Accounting handled what happened after that." Victor interrupted. "Household inventory is not an exact financial control." "Correct." Clara's answer disarmed him again. "That's why inventory alone wasn't treated as proof. It was used to identify records requiring verification." "And who authorized you to make that determination?" Victor asked. The hierarchy returned in one sentence. Maid. Manager. Authority. Dante's hand tightened. Clara saw it. "Mr. Moretti authorized the review after the first discrepancy," she said. "His written authorization is attached to the personnel note you placed in my file." Victor's expression changed. "That note concerned your initial access, and my response remains attached. Nobody has to trust my memory about that either." Clara closed the household ledger. "That's everything I can establish from household operations. Accounting can establish the rest." The accountant presented the Bellwether credits and the consulting company controlled by Victor's brother-in-law. Victor did not confess. He countered. Vendor incentives are normal. The consulting company provided procurement services. We found no services corresponding to the payments. The accountant said. Victor turned toward Dante. You are destroying 18 years of service because a departing maid found clerical inconsistencies and decided they made her important. Clara felt the attack before Victor looked at her. Ask why this began now. She resigns. Suddenly gains private access to your study. Moves into records outside her role. And becomes central to an investigation. Perhaps the woman who spent years feeling invisible discovered a convenient way to make herself indispensable. Dante's face became terrifyingly still. Clara knew one sentence from him could crush Victor's argument. And she knew that sentence would also make her credibility dependent on Dante's power. Let me answer, she said. Clara, let me. He stopped. Clara faced Victor. I accepted the Whitmore job before I found the linen discrepancy. I was already leaving. So I did not need this investigation to earn a promotion here. Victor's mouth tightened. That proves nothing about motive. Exactly. Which is why my motive doesn't matter. Clara opened the ledger again. If you think I wanted attention, count the linen. If you think I'm bitter, call Evelyn. If you think I exceeded my role, read the authorization. If you think I'm too uneducated to understand accounting, good. I'm not asking you to believe my accounting. I'm asking you to explain how 12 becomes 48. Silence spread around the table. Clara continued. Quieter now. You assumed that because I was a maid, what I knew stayed small. That was your mistake. I didn't need your title to know what entered a closet. And I don't need Mr. Moretti to tell this room. I'm trustworthy for the numbers to remain the same after I leave. Victor looked toward Dante. And you accept this? Dante's answer was restrained. I accept the records. You think she understands what it takes to run this estate? Dante glanced at Clara. More of it than I did. The room shifted. Victor laughed once without humor. Then make her estate manager. Perhaps that's what she wanted. Dante's expression did not change. She already has another job. And you're letting her leave. The question escaped before Victor could control it. Several people looked at Dante. Clara did too. Dante could have hidden behind authority. Instead, he said, Yes. Victor stared at him. Why Dante's gaze moved briefly to Clara. Because she chose it. The answer struck Clara harder than the public defense would have. Dante had just been challenged on the fear he barely understood. And he had refused to turn that fear into ownership. Victor's confidence finally broke. Sweat appeared at his temples as two Moretti security men entered at Dante's quiet signal. Dante. Wait. It was the first time Victor had used his first name. I can repay it. Dante's voice dropped into the register that had ended arguments far more dangerous than this one. You falsified access records inside my home. Victor went pale. Clara saw the old machinery of fear assemble around them and stepped beside Dante. Not in front of him. The evidence is complete, she said. Freeze his access. Preserve the records. Recover the money. And send the file to Financial Crimes Council. Don't turn proof into revenge. Dante looked at her for a long second. Then he faced security. Escort him out. No private settlement. Everything goes through council and the authorities. Victor sagged with visible relief and humiliation. Clara did not save him from consequences. She kept Dante from making violence the measure of power. Victor was suspended immediately. His purchasing personnel, and scheduling authority ended before he left the room. Dante did not threaten him or have guards drag him away. Evidence had already taken the power he had abused. After the meeting, Nina, the kitchen manager, and other employees began attaching Clara's name to work they had treated like part of the air. Dante understood that offering Victor's title only after Clara threatened to disappear could not repair years of failing to see her. Still, he offered the position because pretending not to see her ability would be another insult. No, Clara said. Dante accepted it without bargaining. Then he admitted every practical reason for keeping her had been solved. Victor was gone. Purchasing could be fixed. Another manager could be hired, and he still did not want her to leave. That isn't a reason for me to stay. I know. Then what are you asking? Nothing. I'm telling you the truth, without turning it into an obligation. He had not realized the mansion felt like a home until he imagined her gone. Clara still intended to leave. An honest feeling was not yet the same thing as a safe relationship. That evening, Dante asked permission to sit with Clara in the staff garden. She admitted she feared her competence depended on knowing the Moretti house too well. Dante named the skills he had finally learned to see training: coordination, operational judgment, and courage. Then he admitted part of him had wanted Whitmore to fail her, so returning would become the sensible choice. That's ugly. Yes. What changed? I realized wanting them to fail you was another way of wanting your choice to become smaller. He told her he hoped Whitmore was everything they promised, even if that meant she never came back. The loss came 2 days before Clara's departure. Victor contacted Whitmore and framed her as a departing maid who had exceeded her role in financial records. Mrs. Whitmore asked for clarification but did not withdraw the offer. Clara sent her written response, Dante's authorization, and the independently verified findings. If the only thing protecting my credibility is a powerful man saying I'm credible, then I haven't solved the problem that made me leave. Dante promised to respect that boundary and failed within an hour. His lawyers sent Whitmore a notice directing questions through Moretti Counsel. Clara learned about it from her new employer and walked straight into his study. Conduit. Dante called the notice protection. Clara called it fear, wearing a respectable name. You finally reach the point where respect costs you something. And you failed. When he protested, he could not watch Victor damage her future. Clara answered, That's what loving an adult looks like. The word stopped them both. You think this is love. I think you need to decide whether it is. Because fear can look exactly like love when the frightened person has enough power. She gave him a choice: withdraw the notice, or Thursday became today. Dante delayed, then saw the household ledger and understood the lesson he was violating. Authority could be wrong, even when its intentions were kinder. He withdrew the notice and barred further communication about Clara's employment without her written authorization. The next day he apologized without excuses. I used my authority after you told me not to. I called it protection because that made it easier to justify. The risk belongs to you. Whitmore confirmed her start date. Dante looked relieved and miserable at once. Both can be true, Clara said. On Clara's final day, the mansion did not collapse. Nina handled the schedule. Accounting verified deliveries. The kitchen manager updated guest preferences. The temporary receiving coordinator brought Dante a ledger with quantities already checked by the departments that actually received them. Dante signed it and realized every successful handoff proved Clara could leave without the house failing. He had wanted exactly that, because depending on her labor was an unfair reason to keep her. Now he discovered how painful success could be. Clara spent the afternoon making Nina solve problems instead of solving them herself. At 3, she changed out of her housekeeping uniform and folded it on the locker room bench. She wore dark trousers and a soft blouse. There was no makeover. No reveal that the plus-size Maid had secretly been beautiful beneath gray fabric. Clara had always looked like herself. What had changed was that she no longer needed invisibility to feel safe. The staff gathered in the kitchen for a small farewell. Their card remembered the things Clara had assumed. Nobody counted training without humiliation. Covering a shift for a parent. Making mistakes feel fixable instead of dangerous. She had to stop reading halfway through. Before leaving, she opened the linen closet once more. 12 replacement sets sat on the shelf. The proof had never been magical. Clara simply knew what 12 looked like when people with more authority had been willing to sign 48. Dante waited in the front hall. Alone. No guards. No flowers. No new contract. Clara stopped several feet away. "Everything finished?" he asked. "Yes." "Final pay transferred?" "Yes." "Reference received?" Clara touched her bag. "Yes." Dante had rewritten her employment record to reflect documented training, scheduling support, inventory control, and operational coordination. Then written a reference describing her judgment instead of merely calling her dependable. He had sent it only after asking permission. Clara looked toward the front door. "You could have made this very difficult." "Yes." "Why didn't you?" Dante's answer came quietly. "Because I want you to remember leaving this house as something you chose." Clara swallowed. "And what do you want?" He did not hide this time. "I want you to turn around tomorrow." "Not today. Today you're still leaving your employer." Clara's breath caught. "And tomorrow, if you ever turn around. It has nothing to do with your job." She studied him. "I'm still leaving." "I know, and I need you to let it hurt, without making me responsible for fixing it." Dante inhaled slowly. "I don't know how." Clara waited. "But I can do it anyway." She stepped closer and kissed his cheek. "Nothing more. Don't make that bigger than it is," she said. "I'm trying very hard. It means I don't regret that you finally saw me." Dante's eyes held hers. "I regret how long it took." Clara walked toward the door. Dante opened it. At the first step, he said her name. She stopped. He had one last opportunity to ask her to stay. Instead, he said, "Good luck tomorrow." Clara looked back. "Thank you." Then she left. The Whitmore job frightened Clara, which was exactly why it mattered. On her first morning, she made a wrong assumption, apologized, solved some problems, and asked for help with others. Nothing collapsed. When Mrs. Whitmore asked what she would change first, Clara answered, communication between scheduling and receiving. Because the people who know what is happening need a way to reach the people making decisions. Mrs. Whitmore wrote it down. Someone was recording Clara's judgment before a crisis made it valuable. Back at the Moretti mansion, Dante signed a correctly verified ledger and confronted the truth beneath his stopped pen. The house no longer needed Clara to rescue it. He did not miss a maid, or even an indispensable employee. He missed Clara. He stayed silent for a week rather than inventing an excuse to pull her back. On Thursday evening, 1 week after leaving, She sat in her apartment with an old mystery novel open and realized she had read the same paragraph 4 times. Dante's silence had become its own evidence. He possessed endless resources for creating reasons to contact her, and he had chosen not to. Clara picked up her phone and called. Dante answered before the second ring. "Clara," she smiled. "You answer quickly." "I was holding the phone." "Why silence?" "Never mind." "Are you all right?" "Yes." "The job good?" "Good." "You sound disappointed." "I'm attempting not to." Clara laughed softly. "Still learning, painfully." There was a pause. Dante asked, "Why did you call?" The question mattered because he did not assume. Clara looked at the novel on her table. "I thought you might ask me to dinner." Dante said nothing for several seconds. "Dante, I'm making sure I heard correctly." "You did." "Dinner?" "Yes." "With me?" "Don't ruin it." "When Saturday?" "What time?" "That was your second question." "Clara." She smiled. 7. "I'll send a car." "No." "Of course not." "I'll meet you there." "Clara." "Yes." Is this a date? She let him wait. For once, Dante Moretti had no authority over the answer. Yes, their first date was deliberately ordinary. Clara arrived independently, outside the restaurant. Dante hesitated before taking her hand. "You can ask." "May I?" "Yes." At her car, she allowed him one slow kiss. Then, drove herself home. He let her go. And she wanted to see him again, precisely because he had learned how. Their relationship changed through practice rather than instant transformation. When Whitmore later offered Clara more responsibility, Dante swallowed his concerns and asked the question that mattered. "Do you want it?" "I think I do." "Then, congratulations." 3 months after Clara left, the Moretti household held its annual winter dinner. She entered through the front door in a deep green dress that followed her plus-size body without apology. There was no makeover reveal. She had always been worthy. The transformation belonged to the room. Former co-workers greeted her by name. Accounting told her the receiving procedure she helped design had spread to other Moretti properties. Margaret Ellis, the new estate manager, discussed improvements with Clara as an equal. Dante watched without making her arrival about him. Clara did not feel replaced. Margaret was good at her job. Clara was good at hers. Her value had never depended on occupying Victor's chair. Near the end of dinner, Dante stood. Clara had heard his annual remarks before while carrying plates. This year, his voice was quieter. "We corrected a serious purchasing failure this year. But the financial problem was not our first mistake. The first mistake was believing knowledge became valuable only after someone with a title repeated it." The room settled. We had people in this house who knew what arrived, what was used, what employees needed, and what did not make sense. We expected them to perform the work while leaving judgment to people with greater authority. Victor Hale understood that gap and used it. Dante looked toward Clara, but did not turn her into his discovery. The reason he failed was embarrassingly simple. Clara Bennett remembered that 12 linen sets arrived when the paperwork said 48. Clara was correct before I believed her. She was valuable before I noticed her. Those are different facts. Because I did not create her value by recognizing it. I merely stopped ignoring what had been there all along. Clara's throat tightened. The kitchen manager raised his glass. Nina followed. Margaret did too. Then, accounting and employees who had once passed Clara without asking what she knew. Dante lifted his glass. To the people who know the work, Clara raised hers. And to listening, before somebody has to leave. Quiet laughter moved through the room. Dante nodded. Fair. Later. In the garden. Clara told Dante she loved him. His stunned silence made her laugh before he said, I love you too. She reminded him that love did not mean moving back into the mansion or leaving Whitmore. If we ever live together, we decide where and how together. Dante said, even somewhere else. He looked toward the mansion that had represented inheritance and control for most of his life. Even then, Clara believed him, because surrendering control had already cost him something real. Months later, on an ordinary Friday afternoon, Clara stopped at the Moretti mansion after work. By then, she had accepted the expanded Whitmore role and learned a lesson she had not expected. Being indispensable could feel dangerously similar to being valued. Good leadership sometimes meant allowing other people to become competent enough not to need her. She entered through the front door, greeted Nina, exchanged a few words with Margaret, and found Dante in his study signing the weekly household ledger. Clara leaned against the doorway and watched him for a moment. The quantities were verified now by the people who actually received the goods. The system did not depend on her. Dante did not notice her immediately, and Clara found something fitting in that. She waited until his pen reached the next signature. I found another job, she said. The pen stopped. Dante's head rose. Clara held a serious expression for 2 seconds before laughter escaped. Dante stared at her. No. She laughed harder. Your face. That is not funny. It is extremely funny. He put the pen down and stood. There is no other job. No. You are happy at Whitmore. Very. You are not leaving the city. No. Dante exhaled. Clara stepped closer. The pen still stopped. Of course it did. Why? His expression softened. The first time you said those words, I told myself I was reacting because the household was losing a maid. And then I told myself we were losing the person who understood the house. Then I told myself Victor had created a problem only you could help solve. Every explanation was easier than the truth, which was, Dante looked directly at her. I was afraid of losing you before I understood that you were the person I was afraid to lose. Clara touched his jacket. And if I really found another job now? Dante grimaced. I would dislike it immediately. Naturally, I would have serious questions about compensation. Naturally, I would investigate the commute in a manner you would describe as unhealthy. Don't you? But first I would ask what you wanted. And if I wanted to take it, his jaw tightened, because growth had not made the answer painless. Then I would help you celebrate, even if it made your life harder, especially then. Clara kissed him. Behind them, the household ledger remained open on the desk. The numbers were correct. Nina could question a schedule. New staff could report mistakes. And department heads could challenge quantities before payment. The mansion no longer required an invisible woman to carry its knowledge upward in silence. When Nina appeared to ask Clara's opinion on a training schedule, Dante said, You do not work here. I'm aware. Nina smiled. On opinion. Not free labor. Dante stepped aside. Then, it's Clara's choice. Clara held out her hand. Come with me. He took it. They walked through the mansion side by side, past employees who greeted Clara by name. She had been valuable before Dante noticed her, before Victor feared her, before Whitmore promoted her. and before Dante loved her. At the staircase, he matched her pace instead of leading. Clara squeezed his hand and continued upward with him beside her.